1 minute you can, 1 minute it is, 1 minute it ain't. I'm
Yeah,
not
man.
deleting nothing else off my phone. Excuse me. I just deleted my whole YouTube off my shit, and it's still not enough.
Still, wow.
I think got me ready to delete the shit and then download it back. Like, and once I download it back, it'll download everything. I won't, you know what I'm saying? It
Yeah,
won't
it
even
won't be.
say nothing about nothing, none of that shit. Like,
Yeah, ain't nothing gonna be up there. You gonna have to
yeah, I
restart
could put
everything.
everything. I could download YouTube back, Netflix back, all that shit.
I ain't gonna lie, no cap. You might as well do that so it could just be fresh because you don't really need nothing else. Because even your man already, you already can't use your man on 2K no more. The only thing I know you want the information from the Call of Duty. That's the whole point of doing this shit.
I deleted my Disney. I deleted all that shit, and it's still not enough. Like, how?
It got to be something with the system. It can't be the. It's not the space. It got to be something. I mean, not the system, the server, the internet server.
I'm like, why the fuck I can't? This shit is crazy.
Damn. Hold on. I'm gonna jump into the video now.
All
It's
right.
every major difference between Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. Start this up now.
Want to get an advantage over the sportsbooks during the NBA and NHL playoffs? How about an inside edge this MLB season? You need to download BetQL, the only app you'll need to make smart bets. Their best bet algorithm scans over 350,000 unique bets per year to give you the best bet recommendation for every game across all major sports and gives you the reasoning behind why you should make that bet. BetQL also has tons of other tools like sharp data so you can see who the pros are backing and line movement so you can jump on betting
He look like
opportunities
he
in real
texting me
time.
now.
Plus, you can save all your picks in one place and track your success and winning streaks as well as view your rank on their leaderboards. Head to the App Store or the Google Play Store now to download BetQL. You can also head to the link found in the description of this video and in the pinned comment. Enter the discount code Johnny at payment
I ain't
checkout
gonna
for
lie, I never seen this
25%
one
off
before,
of
so it's
any of
gonna
their
be brand new to
subscription
me.
offerings. Also, check out their sportsbook offers page if you live in one of the eligible states to claim free offers upon signing up at one of the many sportsbooks listed. Don't miss out on your chance to be your sportsbook this summer. They're the two greatest shooting guards of basketball history, and although they sometimes appeared as mirror images of one another in terms of style, mentality, and personality, both individuals were actually much more different than the fans typically recognize. I've witnessed countless hours of both of these legends playing the game of basketball, and today, I'm breaking down every major difference that I could
Yo,
recognize
I
to
saw the
help
nigga
you
just
approach
block Jordan
and play
shot.
the
That nigga
game.
fucking
Obviously,
teardrop
this
this.
is just my own limited perspective, so let me know in the comments what are some differences that you've noticed. Number 1. Michael Jordan had much bigger hands. To people who don't know basketball on a deep level, this might initially seem like an insignificant detail, but it's actually quite the opposite. Phil Jackson has spoken in depth about the advantages Jordan had due to his monstrous hands, and even Jordan himself has elaborated on the edge it gave over the competition. Jordan's hands weren't just large for his stature, but he actually had some of the largest hands of any player of NBA history. With Jordan's
Damn,
massive mitts, he
Kawhi
could
Leonard shit
easily
is right
palm
next
and
to this
control
shit.
the basketball, and he could use greater pump fakes and misdirect players more easily. It also allowed him to effortlessly alter and change his shot in midair, which would
Facts.
certainly be more difficult for players
Uh,
who had less control of the basketball due to their smaller hands. And obviously, in an era of hand checking,
The nigga
made
grabbed it
Jordan
out the
even more
air.
difficult defensively. In an
mm,
interview in 2013, Kobe spoke about the difficulties of developing his game without that inherent advantage, saying, "Michael was blessed with massive hands, and Dr. J as well. I wasn't. I have big hands, but Jordan and Irving can literally pick up the ball like an orange. So I've had to do things to strengthen my hands, strengthen my forearms, to make sure that I have the grip to be able to do it. They obviously had the natural capabilities to do it. I had to work to get the strength to be able to do it."
Kobe
Number
had to work
2,
for everything,
Kobe
son.
was a harder worker. This is certainly a bold claim, and isn't meant as a slight to MJ, as he's certainly one of the hardest working basketball players that the game has ever seen. But on the other hand, Kobe has an argument for being the hardest working athlete of all time. As I mentioned in a previous video, the great Phil Jackson made this bold claim himself, which is quite stunning since he spent all of his coaching career with Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. Feel free to pause the video for more time to read Phil Jackson's full quote. As legendary as Kobe's drive was, I could even argue that it was sometimes a negative for Kobe, as he pushed himself so hard that it sometimes had lingering effects on his body. The Mamba was known to play through injury, play heavy minutes, put an insane amount of time into the gym, and apparently lived most of his basketball life on only 4 hours of sleep each night. With an insane work ethic like that, it's no wonder why he's one of the greatest players of all time. But then again, it also makes sense why he dealt with so many injuries throughout his career, considering the fact that he willingly put so much strain on his body. Number 3. Kobe was a better perimeter shooter. Numerous people have made the same conclusion, including Michael Jordan's longtime teammate, Scottie Pippen. When you look at their three-point percentage next to one another, Kobe has a very slight advantage, and it's so close that you could basically call it a tie. But one of the key differences was the fact that Kobe had a much higher tendency of shooting three-pointers, as he shot more than 3 times as many as Jordan did over the course of his career. Some of that has to do with the surge in three-point attempts as the game has evolved.
Right.
But even if you adjust for inflation, Kobe still had a higher tendency of three-point attempts. Analytics have proven that as you take more shots, percentages generally decrease, because you can be less selective with your opportunities, and yet despite that, the Mamba maintains his edge. The perimeter shot advantage isn't just about three-pointers though. Kobe loved to take shots in rhythm just a step or two inside of the three-point line. The Mamba was excellent at these shots, whether he was open or contested. With that being said, analytics showed that generally these are the most inefficient shots on the court, mostly because of their distance and lower conversion rate, while still being worth only 2 points. Which brings us to the next difference. Number 4. Michael Jordan had better shot selection. It's no secret that Michael was a more efficient scorer than Kobe Bryant, averaging 30 points per game over the course of his career on nearly 50% shooting. Big reason for with Kobe in field goal efficiency was because of MJ's sound decision making. Although Michael is famous for making some difficult shots, he certainly wasn't seeking them out. In his younger years, Jordan scored a large portion of his points in the paint and from the free throw line. As he aged, his game became more about the mid-range, and he rarely settled for more difficult opportunities, as he used his high basketball IQ to put himself in good positions to score. Although Kobe had many of these same skills as Jordan, the Mamba's supreme confidence led him to take a tremendous amount of difficult shots that most players wouldn't attempt. During his prime, it was common on a nightly basis for him to shoot through double teams, take heavily contested and off-balance shots from the perimeter, and he took a ton of what us hoopers would call heat check shots. Once again, Phil Jackson gave his own perspective on this topic, and said that Jordan always played within the flow of the team's offense and rarely tried to force anything. While Kobe may have been the more explosive player, but he also had a strong tendency of trying to force the situation and take over games offensively. Number 5. Jordan was the more durable athlete. I somewhat alluded to this earlier, but Kobe was dealing with injuries throughout the majority of his career and caused him to miss well over 100 games. Even in the games where he played, he was often dealing with nagging pain in his hands, wrists, shoulders, knees, and ankles. On the other hand, other than Jordan's second season with a broken foot, he rarely missed any games due to an injury and was often performing at full strength. In fact, excluding his second season, Jordan missed only 7 out of a possible 919 games with the Bulls. This was a testament to his stellar conditioning and his God-given athleticism. Number 6. Kobe was better with his left hand. It's not like there's any fancy left-handed specific stats that I can share with you guys, but you'll just have to take my word for it on this one. Now, Jordan has possibly the greatest layup package in NBA history, and a major aspect of that was his incredible ability to finish the play with his left hand. If that was the only aspect we were looking at, then this advantage would go to Jordan. But I'm pretty sure that Kobe still could have been a legit star even if he had to use his left hand as his dominant hand. The Mamba was working on his left-handed game from an extremely early age. When he broke his right hand, he showed up to Lakers practice and shot entirely with his left hand. And when he injured his right shoulder, he played a significant amount of a regular season game with only his left hand. And of course, many of us remember the ridiculous turnaround left-handed play against the Dallas Mavericks. If Kobe had to play a mid-range game as a left-handed shooter, he's one of the few stars who I believe could still be a successful scorer. Number 7. Michael Jordan had a greater vertical leap. Vertical leap comparisons are
Jump
usually
higher.
a way to get comment sections in heated debates, because it's hard to get credible and precise estimations of each player's leap. With that being said, most listings have Jordan's leap between 46 and 48 inches, while Kobe's is listed around only 38 inches. Even by just the eye test, it's not hard to see how Jordan could have such a tremendous
God
vertical,
damn.
considering his iconic and comfortably stylish
Look
free
at
throw
his
line
head,
dunks,
bro.
and also how Jordan made his hang time famous by appearing to simply wait in the air for his defender to make his descent. Number 8. Michael Jordan is a more competitive person. Whether this is an advantage for MJ or a problem for MJ is really up to your interpretation. When it comes to their mentalities on the basketball court, both players were about as competitive, driven, and intense as a player could possibly be. But off the court is another story. In Kobe Bryant's own words, Michael Jordan was a more competitive person, from the standpoint that Jordan was competitive about more things. I don't think Kobe would have ever conceded that anyone cared more about the outcome of a basketball game than he did. But in an interview, Kobe explained that he's only extremely competitive about the things he cares about, while
Right.
Jordan is competitive in
About
absolutely
everything.
everything. Kobe gave a funny example of a time the two athletes were out to dinner together
John
and how
competitive
Jordan
about
would eat the
everything.
food quickly just to finish his meal before Kobe did. There's many more differences between these two great basketball legends, but these were the biggest ones in my
Ooh.
opinion. Let me know in the comment section what you think were the biggest differences between Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Yeah, that was a good one right there. They pointed out they good points and they bad points.
Yeah. So you feel like everything was valid in what they said.
Yeah, they had good valid points.
Cause I was looking at both of the career stats.
Kind of care about the hand thing, like half the size of the hands, but it really don't matter.
Nah,
I was
I don't
both
think so.
myself, so I know about the hands. You gotta have big hands to be like good, real good.
So you think compared to like other, I would say other shooting guards like in their time, like the Clyde Drexler, the Eddie
Not
Jones,
really, you can't compare nobody
to them too, right?
or Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Cause I was about to try to go to Penny and
Similar players. Yeah.
yeah, but I think just because Penny didn't get, especially Tracy McGrady, they didn't get rings out of their career. So I think it's hard to make an argument about them being, what I mean, more.
Right.
As a shooting guard, I mean, like just shooting guards in general.
Penny was a point guard.
He was a point guard, and I was thinking Paul Pierce was the small forward, right?
Who?
Paul Pierce,
Yeah, Paul Pierce was a small forward.
right? So it was more like Ray Allen.
Slash two guard.
Yeah, he was a slash. I think he came in the league as a two guard. Word. So, but yeah, I
Paul
think so.
Pierce was about 6'7", 6'8".
Yeah, I think he's about 6'8",
Awkward
6'7".
game, a real awkward game.
Yeah.
So, made his game real, made him stick out and made him a star because his game was real awkward.
Right.
He fit in right in with Antoine Walker at the time.
Yeah, he did perfectly. And not to bring up Westbrook, but do you think if Westbrook was like, if you think he started off as a shooting guard instead of a point guard, he would have had a better career than
Who?
Russell Westbrook?
Nah, I wouldn't say.
Nah,
Because he can have the ball in his hand the way he do.
yeah, true. But I also feel like that's what made him make a lot of mistakes in certain games too, because he was the one that's supposed to be dominating the ball or whatnot. And I think James Harden got better playmaking abilities than him. But I think
He always had the playmaking abilities in him, but teams had to trust him to do it. You know, the
Right,
first
right, right.
team was to trust him was Houston.
Yeah, I know, but that's the thing about James Harden in Houston and James Harden in New Orleans. I mean New Orleans, um, Oklahoma, because it was like he was like the dominant scorer.
Yeah,
To,
off the bench from OKC. So
yeah,
yeah, I know. Yeah,
and and it was just I think it was better. I don't know. Like as much as I think he wanted a bigger role on another team, I think he was better being the
so
sixth.
that's why he got that contract from Houston. He got that big contract from Houston. You know, he could have stayed in OKC. He could have stayed OKC and been a starter, starting
You
two
right.
guard.
You right. You right. Yo, you know what's crazy? I want to look at that story right now that you say about it. The
No,
Rockets.
don't get me wrong. He tried it. He just didn't fit in as a starter over there
He
with
did.
Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook.
You're right
So
though. He
they
did
played him
try
his
it.
own team,
That's a fact. Well,
Houston
well,
Rockets.
yup, Houston Rockets, bro. When he
Yeah,
got there, he showed his ass.
uh, but that was the best thing he could have did. You know, he just jumped out of the shadow of two other stars.
That's true. You right. You right. Cause they came in, more like they came in starting. You know what I mean? He came in
Yeah,
as the
they
best.
did. Yeah. Remember, James was a second round pick.
Right.
Wasn't a first round pick. If I'm not too sure, he was a second round pick.
All right. Hold on. I'm gonna watch a little. I'm about to watch another video of the Oklahoma City, like the whole situation with them. So let me put this stream up. I'm
All right,
probably gonna separate this video and make two videos out of it.
already.
All right, there you go.
Growing up, I watched the NBA all the time. Whether it was the Yao Ming led Houston Rockets, who were one of the biggest what ifs in NBA history, the Denver Nuggets with Carmelo Anthony back when he was rocking the cornrows and was one of the baddest players in the league, or my Boston Celtics, who actually played like a team,
No,
which you
you're a
don't see in
Boston
the NBA
fan.
anymore. Now, the NBA is a lot different today because of social media, but back in the day, the NBA never really changed much year after year except for one big moment. The Seattle Supersonics moved to Oklahoma City, and for the first time in a while, the NBA had a team move, and we still haven't seen something like that happen since then. So the young Celtics fan in me was shocked, and really interested in what the heck this Oklahoma City team is going to be called. The NBA had to play games in Oklahoma City when the New Orleans Hornets were affected by Hurricane Katrina, and the NBA was always intrigued by the possibility of having a team there, and I had no clue what they were going to call them. I was probably hoping they would call them the Celtics Down South, or Celtics 2, because, nice kid. But the team that was moving to Oklahoma City had this kid named Kevin Durant, who was this long, athletic wing who could score from anywhere, but was still young and still unproven. And then 6 days before the team moved, they drafted Russell Westbrook 4th overall in the 2008 NBA draft, who led UCLA to 2 Final Fours and was this rock-solid point guard who played hard. The general manager of the team was Sam Presti. Now, Sam Presti is going to be public enemy number 1 in this video. He might have constructed one of the best big threes in NBA history, and he didn't have to piss off many fan bases by doing it. But the longer things went in Oklahoma City, the big three fell apart. But I will get back to that in a minute. Sam Presti began his work as GM of the Sonics in 2007 and immediately did 2 things. He traded Ray Allen to the Celtics and he drafted Kevin Durant. Now, the Sonics only played 1 more season in Seattle before moving to Oklahoma City, and then Presti drafted Westbrook, like I mentioned.
I'm gonna call it back.
They
What's
revealed
the
their
name?
fancy new
That
sky blue uniforms and had a logo with 3 unique color blends,
Say
which
that
a lot of
again?
people hated for some reason, but
I ain't got enough motherfucking space on it. She got me tight. That's why I started playing basketball. I gotta erase. I erased my YouTube, erased my not Netflix, my Disney. I erased all, and there's still not enough space. I'm like, how? Go to the
And that one is 500 gigabytes, right?
uh, yeah, I'm gonna delete all that shit.
That's crazy.
I seem to love it. But let's be honest, this kid loved everything. I mean, look how happy he is. The 2009 season for the Thunder was, however, a big disappointment and the team's worst season. They finished with a 23-59 record, but the good news was they just hired Scott Brooks during the season to be the new head coach, and things were getting better under him. And in the 2009 draft, the Thunder took this kid out of Arizona State 3rd overall. Now, depending on how old you are, you might not remember who this is, but this is actually James Harden. I know, it's wild. You wouldn't recognize him in a suit and tie, but that's 100% him. Now, Sam Presti has gained some street credit for drafting Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden in 3 consecutive NBA drafts. All 3 of these guys would go on to win MVP in the NBA, and if this roster had stayed together, they could have gone down as one of the best Big 3 ever. But they didn't. In 2010, the Thunder finished with a 50-32 record and made the playoffs but lost to the Lakers in 6 games, but they went on to win the title. In the 2011 season, the Thunder were getting much better. They finished with the 55-27 record. They beat the Nuggets and the Grizzlies in the playoffs before losing to the Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals, and they also would go on to win the title. The 2012 Thunder, though, were the peak Thunder in the Big 3 era. The season was shortened due to the lockout, but James Harden won 6th Man of the Year, and the Thunder went on to make the playoffs. They swept the Mavericks a year after losing to them in the Western Conference Finals. Then they beat the Lakers in 5 games and beat the Spurs in 6 games to make the NBA Finals. They did, however, lose to the Heat in 5 games, but this was still a huge accomplishment for the Thunder, and it looked like they were on their way to being an extremely dominant team who would run the NBA for years to come.
They didn't want to give Harden the max. Their position was everyone who's re-signed here has sacrificed a little something.
Oh, see, they wasn't trying to give him the max. That's what happened. And that shit still ain't letting you download it?
Nah, I'm good. It's fine.
It's downloaded?
Oh, nah. That shit ain't downloading.
Oh, man.
I ain't even tripping, so.
All right, hold on, I'm going to turn this back on.
I'm going to go to the
You got to be kidding me. So now the Thunder were left
with a box of scraps
and Katie and Russ. Entering the 2013 season, the Thunder were a really good team and somehow had the best record percentage-wise in the history of the organization. In the playoffs, they somehow lost 2 games to the Rockets and James Harden, and then Russell Westbrook got injured and they lost to the Grizzlies in 5 games in the next round, and boom, season over. In 2014, Katie won MVP. They drafted Khal Drogo, or Aquaman, or Steven Adams. You get to decide. Then they drafted Andre Roberson, who would be one of their best defenders. But this year, the Thunder got past the Grizzlies in 7 games in the first round, then 6 games versus the Clippers. But sadly, they lost to the Spurs in 6 games. In 2015, Kevin Durant had to be shut down due to injuries, and the Thunder missed the playoffs, and Scott Brooks was fired. The end. In 2016, Florida Gators head coach Billy Donovan was hired to coach the Thunder. The Thunder were great this season and got the 3rd seed in the playoffs. They beat the Mavericks and Spurs, but blew a 3-1 lead versus the Warriors. Now, during the 2016 offseason, a lot happened to the Thunder. Kevin Durant was a free agent, and everyone in the league wanted him, including this kid. And I give the Thunder major props because they traded for Domantas Sabonis and Victor Oladipo for Serge Ibaka just to entice KD to stay. But KD was a snake and left. You could have made this kid happy, KD, but you failed him. Russ did go off all season, but I'm not a big fan of his playing style, so averaging a triple-double is great. But did it turn into anything? No, because they lost in the first round to the Rockets and James Harden in 5 games. So Sam Presti knew that he had to make a move. So he went out and took Paul George from the Pacers because he was on his way out. But they gave up Oladipo and Sabonis, who went on to do great things for the Pacers. They also traded for Melo, even though it was a couple years too late, and now the Thunder had a new big 2.5. Russ even signed a 5-year, $205 million contract extension, which I will get into here in a minute. The Thunder did make the playoffs, but lost to the Jazz in 6 games. Now, entering last year, Paul George was a free agent, but he decided to stay in Oklahoma City, which shocked everyone. The Thunder got rid of Melo and got Dennis Schroeder, but the Thunder had another season that was really good because Paul George was in the MVP race. But once the playoffs started, the Thunder faced the Trailblazers, and, well, you know what happened.
Dang,
Lillard, long range 3, and it's good at the buzzer!
And once the season ended, everyone expected the Thunder to be the same old Thunder again. Have a good regular season, put up a bunch of numbers, and lose in the first round. But what we didn't realize was that Sam Presti and the Thunder wanted to get rid of Russ and Paul George and rebuild. They first wanted to trade them to the Raptors so they could team up with Kawhi, but the Raptors didn't want to give up Pascal Siakam. So then the Clippers made the move to get Paul George, and Kawhi signed with the Clippers. And after that, Russ wanted out because he felt betrayed, so Presti traded him to the Rockets for Chris Paul and a ton of draft picks. Now that we have covered all of that, let's talk about Sam Presti for a minute. You could say this man is great at finding talent because of drafting KD, Russ, and Harden. You could say he's an even better trader because of getting Sabonis and Oladipo for an aging vet, and then flipping both of them for Paul George, who even convinced to stay there. And even recently because of trading Paul George and Russ, and getting a ton of draft picks with rights to swap in most cases, and a lot of them are not lottery protected. The Thunder will have 15 draft picks over 7 drafts if all the picks convey. And even getting a young player like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander will help them in rebuilding. But Presti has put this team in cap hell, and that won't get fixed until 2022. And with the amount of money they paid for Russ and PG-13, it was tough to get out of that. It will be interesting if they move Chris Paul or Danilo Gallinari or Dennis Schroeder, but Presti has done one of the most fascinating jobs in the NBA's history. He drafted 3 Hall of Fame players and some of the best to play in the modern era. He then ran them all out because he decided to keep the worst one, and that caused more problems in the future. He has also made moves to get some really good players and even Paul George. And most importantly, he has gotten a ton of draft picks, but he better hope that the Rockets and Clippers end up struggling after a while. But the way the NBA works now and how quickly players move, there's a really good chance that that could happen. But finally, Presti has given some horrible contracts. But he might be able to rebound himself if he drafts right, and by the time 2022 rolls around, he could be good to go. So that in a nutshell is the story of what happened to the Thunder. I did my best talking about it, but there are still some more cap numbers I didn't get into, and maybe some players I didn't talk about. But anyway, thanks for watching everyone, and comment about what you think about Sam Presti and the Thunder, and if you think what they are doing will work.
What's going on, everybody? Going to the Cincinnati Bearcats.
See, I'm gonna end this broadcast right here.